The Grand Plaza Hotel occupied an entire city block in the financial district, its Art Deco facade restored to 1920s glamour at a cost that could have funded a small hospital. Inside, the lobby stretched 3 stories high, crowned by a chandelier containing 15,000 crystals, each one cleaned monthly by a team that charged more per hour than most people earned in a day. Marble columns rose like monuments to wealth, their veins of gold leaf catching light from sources carefully positioned to create the impression of natural radiance. This was hospitality as theater, where every detail performed the same function, reminding guests that they had arrived somewhere exceptional, somewhere that separated them from ordinary life and ordinary people. William Carter stood beneath the hotel's entrance canopy at 6:23 p.m., the evening shift just beginning, watching a Tesla Model S glide toward the valet station. At 72 years old, his body was a museum of old injuries, the shrapnel scar on his left thigh from Vietnam that still ached when it rained, the twisted fingers on his right hand from when a Mercedes had rolled back on them 15 years ago, the persistent ringing in his ears from artillery fire that had never quite faded. He wore the Grand Plaza's valet uniform, burgundy jacket with gold piping, black slacks pressed sharp despite being 6 years old, a name tag that said William in elegant script. His shoes were the problem. The left sole had separated from the leather 2 weeks ago, and he'd glued it back 3 times, but it gaped now when he walked, making a slight flapping sound on the marble entrance. He couldn't afford new ones. Not yet. Not until next month's paycheck, after he'd sent money to his daughter-in-law for his grandson's school supplies. "Good evening, sir." William opened the Tesla's door, his voice carrying the careful courtesy of someone who had learned long ago that politeness was armor. "Welcome to the Grand Plaza." The driver, mid-30s, tech startup wealth written in his casual hoodie and $800 sneakers, barely glanced at him. "Don't scratch it." "Of course not, sir." William had been parking cars for 50 years. He had never scratched one, not once, though he'd been blamed for damage 3 times by guests who arrived with existing scratches they suddenly noticed when claiming them. He drove the Tesla to the underground garage with the gentle precision of someone who treated other people's property better than his own. Parked it in the VIP section, logged the ticket number in the system that had replaced the paper tags he'd used for 45 of his 50 years. Technology changed. Disrespect remained constant. Back at the entrance, the evening rush had begun. A Bentley, 2 Mercedes, a Maserati, each one worth more than William would earn in 5 years, each driver performing wealth with varying degrees of grace. Some nodded to him, most didn't. He was part of the service, like the automatic doors or the heated floors, functional and invisible. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from his daughter-in-law, Sarah. "Boys need new jackets. Weather getting cold. Can you help?" William's chest tightened. The grandsons, Michael, age 8, and David Jr., age 10, named for William's son who had died of an overdose 3 years ago. The boys Sarah was raising alone while working 2 jobs, the boys William helped support from a valet's wages that hadn't increased in 7 years. He texted back, "We'll send $150 Friday. Hang in there." It meant he'd skip his blood pressure medication refill this month, but the boys needed jackets. "Carter!" The voice cut through the lobby's orchestrated ambiance like a car alarm. Sebastian Cross, the hotel's general manager, stood in the entrance with the particular posture of men who had learned authority at British boarding schools and wielded it like inherited wealth. At 41, he wore his position like his suit, perfectly tailored, slightly uncomfortable, maintained at all costs. "Yes, Mr. Cross?" William straightened, ignoring the protest in his lower back. "A word. Now." Sebastian gestured curtly toward the entrance alcove, away from the main flow of guests. William followed, his damaged shoe flapping softly against marble. He saw Sebastian's eyes flick down to the sound, saw the disgust that flashed across his features. "What is the state of your footwear, Carter?" "Sir, I apologize. The sole came loose. I've been repairing it." "Repairing it?" Sebastian's accent made even contempt sound refined. "This is the Grand Plaza Hotel. We have standards. Appearances matter. You look like a homeless person who wandered in off the street." Heat rose in William's chest, but he kept his voice steady. I understand, sir. I'm purchasing new shoes next month when— Next month? Sebastian laughed, sharp and mirthless. No, Carter, not next month. Tomorrow, or you don't work here. We cannot have staff members who present themselves like this. William did the math in his head. New shoes from the uniform supplier, $180. His bank account, $340 until Friday's paycheck. Rent due Tuesday, $800. The $150 he'd promised Sarah. His medication, groceries. The calculation was simple and devastating. Mr. Cross, I've worked here for 23 years. My record is perfect. I've never— Your record is irrelevant if you cannot maintain basic professional appearance. Sebastian checked his phone, already bored with the conversation. This is your final warning. New shoes by tomorrow's shift, or consider your employment terminated. A limousine pulled up to the entrance. Long, black, probably a corporate client. Sebastian's attention shifted instantly, his expression transforming into practiced hospitality. We'll discuss this later. Get back to work. And try not to let guests see those shoes. You're embarrassing the entire establishment. William returned to his post, his face carefully neutral despite the humiliation burning in his chest. The limousine's passenger emerged, a woman in her 50s, dripping diamonds and disdain. He opened her door, greeted her with the same courtesy he'd offered 5,000 times before, parked her car with the same care. But something had shifted. 23 years of invisible labor, of treating other people's luxury with reverence while his own shoes fell apart, of smiling through disrespect because he needed the paycheck, because 2 grandsons needed jackets, because survival required swallowing dignity in small doses every single day. The evening continued its expensive rhythm. A Porsche, a Range Rover. A classic Jaguar whose owner actually thanked him, a moment of human recognition so rare it almost hurt. At 8:47 p.m., a Mercedes S-Class, matte black, custom wheels, the kind of vehicle that announced wealth without needing to shout, pulled smoothly into the circular drive. William approached, his training overriding his exhaustion, his flapping shoe forgotten in the practiced routine. The driver's door opened before William reached it. A man stepped out, mid-30s, dark hair styled with expensive product, a suit that William recognized as Italian even from a distance. But it was the tattoo creeping up from the man's collar that made William pause. Intricate work, the kind that told stories if you knew how to read them. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Grand Plaza. William's voice remained steady, professional. The man looked at him, really looked at him, not through him the way most guests did. His eyes were dark, calculating, taking in details that others missed. William felt suddenly exposed, as if this stranger could read his financial desperation, his aching feet, his grandson's need for winter jackets in the lines of his face. Good evening? The man's voice carried an accent. Italian, first-generation American, perhaps. How long have you worked here? The question surprised William. Guests rarely asked. 23 years, sir. That's a long time in one place. You must have seen a lot. Yes, sir. The hotel has changed considerably. William gestured toward the car. Would you like me to park your vehicle, sir? In a moment. The man pulled out his phone, checked something, then looked back at William. What's your name? William Carter, sir. Most people call me Bill. Mr. Carter. The man extended his hand. Marco Vitale. William shook it, caught off guard by the gesture. Guests didn't shake hands with valets. The man's grip was firm, his hand manicured but bearing old scars across the knuckles, the marks of someone who had fought with fists before they could afford to fight with money. Marco! Sebastian Cross appeared from the lobby, his professional charm dialed to maximum, recognizing a high-value guest when he saw one. Mr. Vitale, welcome back to the Grand Plaza. I trust your room is satisfactory? It's adequate. Marco's attention remained on William. I was just speaking with Mr. Carter here. 23 years of service. That's impressive dedication. Sebastian's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, well, Carter is one of our longest-serving staff members, though I'm afraid we were just discussing some issues regarding professional presentation. What issues? Marco's voice hadn't changed tone, but something in it made Sebastian pause. Minor uniform matters, nothing that concerns our guests. Sebastian tried to redirect. Now, if you'll allow Carter to park your vehicle, I'd be happy to personally escort you to— What uniform matters? Marco repeated, his gaze shifting to Sebastian with an intensity that suggested this was not a casual question. Sebastian's practiced composure wavered slightly. Really, Mr. Vitale, it's internal staff management, not appropriate to his shoes. Marco's eyes dropped to William's feet, taking in the separated soul, the visible desperation. When he looked back up at Sebastian, his expression had gone cold. You have a problem with his shoes. The Grand Plaza maintains certain standards, Sebastian said, defensive now. Appearance is part of our brand promise to guests. I see. Marco pulled out his phone again, scrolled through contacts with deliberate slowness. Tell me, Sebastian, who owns this hotel? The question seemed to catch Sebastian off guard. The Grand Plaza is owned by Meridian Luxury Hotels, a private equity firm based in— I know who owns it. Marco's thumb hovered over a contact name. I know because I'm considering investing in their portfolio. Was considering. Past tense now. He pressed dial, lifted the phone to his ear, his eyes never leaving Sebastian's face. James, it's Marco, that Meridian Hotels investment we discussed. I want you to make a different proposal. I want to buy the Grand Plaza, not invest. Buy it outright. Yes, tonight. Whatever it takes. Sebastian's face had gone pale. William stood frozen, his flapping shoe suddenly the least significant thing in his universe. Marco lowered the phone slightly. Mr. Carter, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has this man been treating you with respect? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications William was only beginning to understand. William looked at Sebastian, then at Marco, calculating the cost of honesty. 23 years of employment, 2 grandsons who needed winter jackets, a bank account that couldn't sustain unemployment. But something in Marco's eyes, a recognition, an understanding of invisible labor, made the calculation shift. No, sir, William said quietly. He hasn't. Sebastian's face flushed red. Carter, this is completely inappropriate. Mr. Vitale, I apologize for this display of— Be quiet. Marco's voice was soft, conversational, and absolutely final. Sebastian's mouth closed mid-sentence, years of boarding school authority crumbling against something older and more dangerous. Mr. Carter was answering my question. Please continue. William felt the weight of the moment. The gathering attention from other guests and staff who had slowed their movement, sensing drama. Mr. Cross told me today that my shoes are unacceptable, that I look like a homeless person, that if I don't purchase new uniform shoes by tomorrow, I'm fired. How much do the shoes cost? Marco asked. $180, sir, from the approved uniform supplier. And you don't have that money right now. It wasn't a question, but William answered anyway. No, sir. I send money to my daughter-in-law for my grandsons. Their father, my son, passed away 3 years ago. She's raising them alone. I help when I can. Marco nodded slowly, something in his expression suggesting he understood that kind of calculation, that kind of sacrifice. He lifted his phone back to his ear. James, still there? Yes. Accelerate the timeline. I want ownership transferred by midnight, if possible. Cost is irrelevant. He ended the call and turned his full attention to Sebastian, who had begun to sweat despite the lobby's perfect climate control. Do you know what my grandmother did for a living? Marco asked Sebastian, his tone still conversational, still dangerous. No, Mr. Vitale, I don't see how— She worked in hotels, places like this. Room service, housekeeping, sometimes front desk when they were short-staffed. 38 years in the hospitality industry. Marco stepped closer to Sebastian, invading his personal space with the confidence of someone accustomed to violence. She worked double shifts, triple sometimes. Holidays, weekends, birthdays she missed because wealthy people needed their turn-down service and their chocolate on their pillow. William stood very still, recognizing his own story and Marco's grandmother's, seeing the pattern that connected service workers across decades, across locations, across the invisible boundary that separated those who served from those who were served. You know what guests gave her for those 38 years? Marco continued. Nothing. Maybe a dollar tip if she was lucky. Maybe a thank you if someone was feeling particularly generous. Mostly she was invisible, part of the infrastructure, like the plumbing or the Wi-Fi. Mr. Vitale, I understand you're upset, but... Sebastian tried. I'm not upset. Marco's smile was cold. I'm angry. There's a difference. Upset is emotional. Anger is clarifying. He gestured to William. This man has worked here for 23 years, 2 decades of parking cars for people who barely see him, and you threatened his livelihood because his shoes he can't afford to replace because he's supporting his dead son's children, don't meet your aesthetic standards. Other guests had stopped now, pulled into the orbit of this confrontation. A woman in a fur coat paused by the elevator. 2 businessmen in the seating area had lowered their phones. The concierge had frozen mid-gesture. Everyone was watching Sebastian Cross discover that cruelty had consequences. This is a private personnel matter, Sebastian insisted, but his voice had lost its authority, replaced by something closer to panic. You're a guest, Mr. Vitale, and I appreciate your concern, but I'm not a guest. Marco checked his phone again, smiled slightly at whatever he saw. James just sent confirmation. Meridian Luxury Hotels accepted the offer, pending some paperwork, but the sale is essentially complete, which means in approximately, he glanced at his watch, 4 hours, I will own this hotel, which makes you my employee, for about 5 more hours. The lobby had gone completely silent. Even the ambient music seemed to have paused, though that was probably William's imagination, his brain trying to process what was happening. You can't just buy a hotel in one night, Sebastian protested weakly. You can when the private equity firm is hemorrhaging cash and you offer 30% over market value, all cash, immediate close. Marco's tone was almost bored now, as if buying hotels was something he did regularly. Meridian needed liquidity. I provided it. Simple business transaction. He turned to William, his expression softening. Mr. Carter, how much do you make per hour? $15, sir, plus tips, which average about another 5 per hour. And benefits? Basic health insurance, sir. High deductible. No dental, no vision. Marco pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card and $500 bills. He handed them to William. The cash is for new shoes and whatever else you need. The card has my personal number. I'd like to offer you a position as Director of Guest Services when the ownership transfer completes. Salary starting at $70,000 per year, full benefits including dental and vision. And your primary responsibility will be ensuring that every staff member in this hotel is treated with the dignity my grandmother never received. William stared at the money in his hand, his mind unable to process the sudden reversal of his circumstances. Sir, I don't have experience in management. You have 50 years of experience understanding what guests actually need and what staff actually endure. That's more qualification than most hospitality executives have. Marco's voice was gentle now. You don't have to decide tonight, but think about it. He turned back to Sebastian, and the gentleness disappeared. As for you, you're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. You have 15 minutes to leave the premises. You can't do this! Sebastian's composure shattered completely. I have a contract. Severance provisions. I'll sue. Your contract has a termination for cause clause, creating a hostile work environment, threatening employees, failing to maintain proper staffing standards. I'm sure we can document sufficient cause. Marco gestured to the concierge, who had been watching with barely concealed satisfaction. Please, call security. Mr. Cross needs an escort. Sebastian looked around the lobby, searching for allies, finding only witnesses to his humiliation. The guests who had watched him perform authority for years now watched him lose it in real time. This is because of him? Sebastian pointed at William, venom in his voice. You're destroying my career over some old man who can't even afford shoes? No. Marco's voice dropped to something dangerous. I'm holding you accountable for abusing power over someone who couldn't fight back, and his name is William Carter. Use it. 2 security guards appeared, young men who had probably endured their own share of Sebastian's condescension. They flanked him professionally, waiting. "This isn't over," Sebastian hissed at Marco as he was led away. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," Marco called after him, "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A middle manager who confused authority with worth. You're not dangerous, you're just mean. And mean people are boring." After Sebastian disappeared into the elevator, the lobby slowly resumed its rhythm. Guests returned to their phones and their conversations. Staff members exchanged glances that mixed relief with uncertainty about what came next. Marco turned to William, who still stood holding $500 bills and a business card, his flapping shoe suddenly irrelevant in the scope of what had just happened. "Mr. Carter, I need to check in properly and handle some calls. But I'd like to speak with you later tonight, if you're willing. Maybe over coffee? I'd like to hear more about your 23 years here." "Sir, Mr. Vitale, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything right now." Marco's smile was genuine this time, warm. "Just finish your shift without worrying about your shoes, or your job, or anything except getting home safely to those grandsons who need you." He handed his keys to William. "Park my car wherever you think it should go. I trust your judgment more than any valet system." As Marco walked into the lobby, phone already to his ear handling the acquisition details, William stood under the entrance canopy holding $500 bills and a job offer that would change everything. His phone buzzed. "Sarah. Boy's asking about you. When can you visit?" William looked at the money in his hand, thought about winter jackets and new shoes, and a salary that would mean he could afford his medication and help his grandsons, and maybe, finally, stop calculating survival in such small increments. He texted back, "This weekend, and I have good news, better than good." Then he parked Marco Vitale's Mercedes with the same care he'd given every car for 50 years. But this time, it felt different. This time, someone had seen him. The hotel's executive lounge at 11:30 p.m. was empty, except for Marco and William, sitting in leather chairs that cost more than William's monthly rent, drinking coffee from a French press that Marco had requested personally. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives, most of them struggling in ways the Grand Plaza's usual guests would never understand. William had changed out of his uniform, Marco had insisted, and wore his street clothes, khakis and a button-down shirt from a discount store, clean but showing their age. His new shoes, purchased an hour ago from an all-night supplier Marco had called, felt strange on his feet. Comfortable, strange. The kind of strange that came from not having to compensate for a flapping soul. "Tell me about your son," Marco said, his coffee untouched, his attention entirely focused on William. William was quiet for a moment, organizing thoughts he usually kept buried beneath the necessities of survival. "David Jr. He was 31 when he died. Opioids. Started with a prescription after a construction accident, ended with fentanyl from a dealer who didn't care if his product killed people. I'm sorry. He left 2 boys. Good boys, smart. Michael wants to be a teacher. David, we call him DJ, wants to be a Marine like his grandfather." William's voice caught slightly. "I see myself in DJ, that same belief that military service means something. I hope he's right. I hope his service turns out better than mine did." "Vietnam?" Marco asked. 2 tours, 68 and 69. Came back with shrapnel in my leg and nightmares that still wake me up 50 years later." William took a sip of coffee, the expensive kind that tasted like it cost, smooth and complex. "The VA helps some, but there's no medication for the guilt of coming home when better men didn't." Marco nodded, understanding something in that statement that went beyond words. "My grandmother, Isabella Romano, she came to America when she was 19. Alone. No English, no family. She found work in hotels because cleaning rooms required no language skills, just invisible labor that paid barely enough to survive." He finally picked up his coffee, held it without drinking. "She worked until she was 74. Not because she loved hospitality, because she had no retirement, no pension, no safety net. She died 6 months after she finally stopped working. Doctor said it was her heart, but I think she just had nothing left to give." "I'm sorry." William echoed Marco's earlier words, meaning them. She raised me after my parents died. Car accident. I was 8. Marco's voice carried the flatness of old pain, trauma that had stopped hurting and started defining. She worked nights so she could take care of me during the day. I remember her coming home at 2 a.m. exhausted and still making me breakfast before school, still checking my homework, still pretending everything was fine. She sounds like she loved you very much. She did. Which is why it destroyed me when I chose this life. Marco gestured vaguely at himself, at the expensive suit and the tattoo, and everything they represented. She begged me not to join my uncle's organization, said she didn't clean hotel rooms for 38 years so I could become a criminal. William set down his coffee carefully. But you did anyway. I did anyway. No defensiveness, just acknowledgement. I told myself I was doing it for her, that I'd make enough money that she could finally retire. By the time I had that kind of money, she was too sick to enjoy it, and she refused to take $1 from me, called it blood money. She was right. The lounge was silent, except for the subtle hum of climate control and the distant sound of the city below. William thought about choices made under pressure, about survival versus morality, about the impossible calculations poor people made while rich people slept. Is it? William asked. Blood money? Marco met his eyes. Most of it, probably. I've done things I can't undo, hurt people, profited from suffering. I'm not a good man, Mr. Carter. Buying this hotel, firing Sebastian, offering you a job, none of that makes me good. It just makes me marginally less terrible for one night. And yet you did it. William leaned forward slightly, his Vietnam-earned insight into human nature recognizing something in this dangerous stranger. You could have walked past me, could have let Sebastian humiliate me without consequence, could have stayed in your expensive room and never thought about the man with the flapping shoes again. My grandmother wouldn't have let me. Marco smiled slightly, sadly. Even dead, she's still in my head, telling me to see people, to remember that everyone cleaning rooms or parking cars or serving meals is someone's grandmother, someone's son, someone who matters. She'd be proud of you tonight. Maybe. Or maybe she'd say I'm using money I earned through violence to feel better about myself, that I'm performing redemption instead of actually changing. Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. James, the ownership transfer is complete. As of midnight, I own the Grand Plaza Hotel. Congratulations. Thank you, which means I can now officially offer you that director position. $70,000 to start, full benefits, and your job is to make sure no one who works here ever feels invisible again. Marco set down his coffee. But I need you to understand something first. I'm not doing this because I'm a good person. I'm doing this because seeing you reminded me of Isabella, and I couldn't walk past that reminder without doing something. Why does the motivation matter if the result helps people? Because you should know who you're working for, what my money comes from, what kind of man signs your paychecks. Marco's voice was quiet, but firm. I want you to make an informed choice, not a desperate one. William thought about his grandsons, about winter jackets and school supplies, and maybe someday college tuition. He thought about dignity and survival and the complicated mathematics of morality when you're 72 and running out of time to make things better. Mr. Vitale, Marco, I've worked for 23 years for people who saw me as furniture. I've parked cars for men who made their fortunes, destroying the environment, exploiting workers, crushing competitors. At least you're honest about what you are, and at least you're trying to do something better with your power. Is that a yes? William extended his hand. That's a yes. They shook, two men from different worlds connected by dead people who had worked themselves to death in the service of others' comfort, by the shared understanding that sometimes redemption was less about being good and more about being better than you were yesterday. I'll need training, William said. I don't know anything about hotel management beyond the valet station. You know the most important thing. You know what it's like to be invisible. Everything else we can teach. Marco stood, buttoning his jacket. Take tomorrow off. Spend time with your grandsons. Buy them those winter jackets. Monday, you start your new position. As William left the Grand Plaza that night, walking past the entrance where he'd stood for 23 years, his new shoes making no sound on the marble, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the cautious hope of something better, of change, of being seen. Behind him, Marco Vitale stood at the window of his suite, phone pressed to his ear, already making calls to restructure the hotel's employment practices, to raise wages, to ensure that Isabella Romano's ghost could rest a little easier. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. 5 days passed in a strange new rhythm. William took his grandsons shopping, real shopping, not the thrift store calculations he was used to. Michael got a blue jacket with reflective strips. DJ got a black one with too many pockets, perfect for a 10-year-old who dreamed of being a Marine. Sarah cried when William gave her a check for $2,000, enough to cover 3 months of expenses she'd been juggling on credit cards. "Grandpa, are we rich now?" Michael asked on the drive back from the mall, his 8-year-old logic trying to process the sudden change. "No, buddy, but we're okay, and okay is pretty good." William glanced in the rearview mirror at his grandsons, both wearing their new jackets despite the car's heat. "Grandpa got a better job. Things are going to be easier now." Monday morning, William reported to the Grand Plaza in a suit Marco had sent over. Nothing extravagant, but professional, tailored to actually fit him. He had an office now, small, but with a window. His name on the door, William Carter, Director of Guest Services. The hotel staff treated him differently, some with genuine warmth. The housekeepers, the kitchen workers, people who had been invisible alongside him. Others with cautious distance, the front desk managers, the concierge team, people who weren't sure what to make of a valet-turned-executive. On Thursday afternoon, William was reviewing employee complaints. A stack of them, years of grievances that had been ignored under Sebastian's management, when his phone rang. Sarah. Her voice was panicked. "Bill, DJ didn't come home from school. It's been 2 hours. I've called everyone. I drove the route." He's not answering his phone. Ice formed in William's chest. "Did you call the police?" "They said it hasn't been long enough. That 10-year-old boys sometimes lose track of time." Sarah's voice cracked. "But he always comes straight home. Always. Something's wrong." "I'm coming. Stay by your phone." William grabbed his coat, headed for the door, nearly colliding with Marco in the hallway. "What's wrong?" Marco read his face instantly. "My grandson, 10 years old, didn't come home from school. It's not like him." William's voice was steady, but his hands shook. "I need to go." "I'm coming with you." Marco was already pulling out his phone, typing rapidly. "What's his name? What school?" "David Carter Jr., Lincoln Elementary." William didn't question why Marco was helping, just accepted it. "DJ." "Everyone calls him DJ." They took Marco's Mercedes, and Marco made calls as William drove to Sarah's apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that was trying hard not to slide into something worse. Marco's voice was calm, authoritative, speaking in rapid Italian to someone named Luca, then switching to English for other calls. "I have people checking," Marco said. "Security cameras near the school, traffic cameras on the route home. If he's out there, we'll find him." Sarah met them at the door, her face pale, Michael clinging to her side. Still nothing. His phone goes straight to voicemail. Marco crouched to Michael's level. "Hey, buddy, I'm Marco. I work with your grandpa. Can you tell me about DJ? Does he have a favorite place? Somewhere he might go?" "The park," Michael said quietly. "By the old water tower. He goes there sometimes to think." "Thinking about what?" "About his dad. About being a Marine like Grandpa." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Is DJ okay?" "We're going to make sure he is," Marco promised, and something in his voice made it sound like a guarantee rather than hope. Marco's phone buzzed. He stepped away, listened, his expression darkening. When he returned, his face was controlled, but William could see anger beneath it. "William, we need to talk. Privately." They stepped outside. Marco's jaw was tight. "My people found him. He's safe, but there's a situation. Sebastian Cross has him." "What?" William's vision narrowed. "How? Why, revenge. Sebastian's been watching your family since he got fired. He grabbed DJ after school, left a message with one of his old hotel contacts. He wants his job back, wants you fired. Wants me to reverse everything I've done, or… Marco stopped. Or what? Or he'll make sure DJ disappears permanently. He's desperate, William. Desperate people do terrible things. William felt something break open inside him. The careful control he'd maintained for 72 years. The patience that had let him endure decades of disrespect. The gentleness that had survived Vietnam and poverty and loss. All of it shattered against the simple fact of his grandson in danger. Where is he? William's voice was flat, cold, a tone he hadn't used since 1969. A warehouse by the docks. Sebastian's holed up there with DJ and 2 men he hired, amateurs, private security types who needed money. Marco's eyes held understanding. I have people surrounding the building, but I wanted to tell you first. Before I handle this my way. Your way? My people are very good at extracting hostages, very good at making sure kidnappers understand their mistake. But it's not clean, William. It's not legal. And it will tie you to my world in ways you might not want. William thought of DJ's face, his dreams of being a Marine, his dead father's name. He thought of Michael waiting inside, terrified. He thought of Sarah, who had already lost her husband and couldn't lose her son. I don't care about clean, William said. I care about getting my grandson back. Do what you need to do. Marco nodded once, pulled out his phone. Luca? Green light. Go get the boy. And Luca? Sebastian Cross doesn't leave that warehouse walking. Make sure he understands what happens when you threaten children. He ended the call, put a hand on William's shoulder. My people will have DJ back in 30 minutes, safe, unharmed, I promise you. And Sebastian? We'll learn that there are consequences for threatening people I protect. Marco's voice was cold, final. He wanted to know who he was dealing with. Now he'll find out. They went back inside. William held Michael while Sarah paced. Marco made more calls, coordinating, checking in, his voice a constant stream of Italian and English that somehow made the apartment feel less like a place where they were helplessly waiting and more like a command center where things were being handled. 28 minutes later, Marco's phone rang. He answered, listened, smiled slightly. They have him. DJ's safe. Luca's bringing him here now. Sarah collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief. Michael buried his face in William's shoulder. William closed his eyes, feeling his heart rate slowly return to normal, the Vietnam reflexes that had flooded his system beginning to recede. And Sebastian? William asked quietly. In police custody. Kidnapping charges. His 2 hired men are cooperating, giving statements. Sebastian will be in prison for a very long time. Marco met his eyes. He won't be a problem anymore. 10 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up. Luca, broad-shouldered, competent, carrying a frightened but unharmed 10-year-old boy, brought DJ to the door. Grandpa! DJ ran to William, and William caught him, held him, feeling the solid weight of his grandson alive and safe and here. I've got you, William whispered. You're safe now. I've got you. Over DJ's head, William met Marco's eyes and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Marco nodded once. Understanding passing between them. The debt that had just been created. The bond that had just been sealed. The moment when William Carter had fully entered Marco Vitale's world and accepted all that came with it. Let's get you all somewhere safer, Marco said, until we're certain there are no other threats. I have a house outside the city, secure, comfortable. You can stay there as long as you need. William looked at his grandsons, at Sarah's tear-stained face, at the modest apartment that suddenly felt like a target. Okay, he said, we'll go. Because sometimes safety required accepting help from dangerous men, and sometimes the only thing that mattered was protecting the people you loved, no matter what world you had to enter to do it. The safe house was 30 minutes outside the city, disguised as a suburban home on a quiet street where neighbors minded their business and security cameras covered every angle. Inside, it was comfortable, not ostentatious, but equipped with everything a family might need to wait out danger in something approaching normalcy. DJ and Michael shared a room with bunk beds and a gaming console Luca had installed. Sarah had her own space, and William found himself in a guest room that was larger than his apartment bedroom, sitting on furniture that didn't creak, looking out windows that weren't barred. For 3 days, they stayed. Marco visited daily, bringing groceries, checking on them, working on his laptop at the kitchen table while the boys did homework, and Sarah slowly stopped flinching at every sound. On the 4th day, Marco arrived with news. Sebastian Cross was arraigned this morning. Kidnapping, attempted extortion, child endangerment. The DA is pushing for maximum sentencing. He'll be in prison for 15 to 20 years. William was quiet, processing. Did your people do anything illegal? No. We extracted DJ. We called the police immediately with his location and evidence of the kidnapping. Everything by the book. Marco's smile was slight. Well, mostly by the book. The evidence was very thoroughly documented. Security footage, phone records, witness statements. Sebastian's lawyers have nothing to work with. Thank you, William said simply. For everything. For DJ. For keeping us safe. Your family now, Marco said, and something in the way he said it suggested that for him, family was a category with weight and obligation. Which means I protect you. That's how this works. Sarah appeared in the doorway, the boys behind her. Marco, we can't stay here forever. The boys need school. I need to work. We have a life to get back to. I know, which is why I've arranged some things. Marco pulled out a folder. Your apartment building. I bought it. Technically, one of my companies bought it. Rent stays the same, but security is significantly upgraded. Armed guard in the lobby, camera systems, controlled access. Sebastian's people won't get near you. He turned to William. And the Grand Plaza needs its director of guest services. The staff has been asking about you. Changes are already happening. Wage increases, better benefits, new management training. But they need you there to make sure those changes stick. William thought about the hotel, about the housekeepers and kitchen staff and valets who had been invisible for years. What about the people Sebastian hired? The security who helped him? Cooperating fully with police, small-time guys who made a bad choice for quick money. They'll face charges, but lighter ones in exchange for testimony. Marco's expression was neutral. They're not the real problem. Sebastian was. And he's handled. 2 days later, William returned to the Grand Plaza. Staff members greeted him differently now, not just as the valet who got promoted, but as someone who had survived something, who belonged to something bigger than the hotel's hierarchy. His first week, William raised the starting wage for housekeeping and valet staff by $3 an hour. His second week, he implemented a policy requiring management to spend 1 shift per month working frontline positions. His third week, he fired 2 supervisors who had been reported for harassment but protected under Sebastian's regime. The hotel changed, slowly but visibly. Staff stood straighter, smiled more. The invisible people became visible. Marco watched from the periphery, handling his businesses, making his calls, being whatever he was in his other life. But he checked on William weekly, had dinner with the family monthly, attended DJ's school play, and Michael's science fair. One evening, 6 weeks after Sebastian's arrest, William and Marco sat in the executive lounge where they'd had their first real conversation. "You've done good work here," Marco said, gesturing at reports showing improved staff retention, higher guest satisfaction, better reviews. "I'm trying, still learning." William set down his coffee. "But I wanted to ask you something. That night, when you walked into the hotel and saw Sebastian humiliate me, why did you help? Really? You could have just ignored it." Marco was quiet for a long moment. "My grandmother died, believing I was a disappointment, that I'd wasted the life she sacrificed for. I couldn't argue with her because she was right. But when I saw you, saw Sebastian treating you the way Isabella was treated for 38 years, I thought maybe I could do one thing she'd be proud of. Just one thing." One thing turned into buying a hotel, saving my grandson, changing hundreds of lives. One thing turned into trying to be better. Marco stood, buttoned his jacket. "I'm still not a good man, William. I still do things Isabella would be ashamed of. But maybe I'm slightly less disappointing than I was. That's something." "It's more than something," William said. It's enough. As Marco left, William returned to the stack of applications on his desk. Staff members requesting training, asking about promotion opportunities, believing for the first time that their work might lead somewhere beyond survival. Outside, the Grand Plaza's entrance glowed with lights that welcomed everyone, not just those who could afford the highest floors. Inside, invisible people were learning to be seen. And somewhere, maybe, Isabella Romano and David Carter Sr. looked down and smiled at the complicated men they'd raised, finding ways to be better than they were, one difficult choice at a time. The Grand Plaza Hotel looked the same from the outside. Same Art Deco elegance, same crystal chandelier visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, same luxury cars pulling up to the entrance. But everything that mattered had changed. William Carter stood in the lobby at 4:15 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, reviewing the day's operations on a tablet that still felt foreign in his 74-year-old hands. His suit was tailored properly now, his shoes were comfortable, and the name tag on his lapel read William Carter, Director of Guest Services and Staff Advocacy, in elegant script. Around him, the hotel hummed with a different energy than it had 2 years ago. Housekeepers moved through the lobby with their heads up, acknowledged by guests and management alike. Valet staff wore new uniforms that actually fit, their shoes provided by the hotel and replaced every 6 months. The front desk team smiled genuinely, not the practiced hospitality of people who feared their managers, but the real warmth of employees who felt valued. "Mr. Carter?" A young woman approached, Maria Rodriguez, one of the housekeepers William had promoted to floor supervisor after she'd shown exceptional leadership during a staffing crisis. "The training session for new hires is ready. They're waiting in conference room B." "Thank you, Maria. How are you finding the supervisor role?" "Challenging. Good challenging." Maria smiled. "My daughter starts college in the fall. Engineering. Because of the education benefits you implemented, I can actually afford to send her." William felt the familiar warmth of purpose. The knowledge that the changes he'd fought for were rippling outward into lives and futures beyond this building. "That's wonderful. Tell her congratulations from me." He made his way to the conference room, where 12 new employees, front desk, housekeeping, kitchen, valet, sat waiting. This was his favorite part of the job, orientation, where he got to explain to people on their first day that the Grand Plaza was different now, that they mattered, that their work had dignity. "Welcome," William began, "to a hotel that sees you, not as functions or uniforms or positions to be filled, but as people with families and dreams and lives that matter as much as any guests." After the session, William returned to his office to find Marco waiting, sitting in the visitor's chair with the comfortable ease of someone who owned the building and knew he was welcome. "How's the new training program going?" Marco asked. "Well, we've had 0 turnover in the last 6 months. Staff satisfaction scores are the highest in the company's history." William sat behind his desk, still sometimes amazed that this was his life now. "How are your other hotels?" Marco had acquired 3 more properties in the past year, implementing the same reforms he'd started at the Grand Plaza. "Slow progress. Changing culture takes time, but we're getting there." "And your other businesses?" William asked carefully, referring to the parts of Marco's empire that existed in shadows. "Still complicated, still morally questionable." Marco's honesty was something William had come to appreciate. "But I'm trying to shift things, more legitimate ventures, less violence. It's a process." Isabella would appreciate the effort. "Maybe." Marco pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I have something for you. An invitation. There's a hospitality industry awards ceremony next month. The Grand Plaza is being recognized for our worker satisfaction initiatives. They want you to accept the award." William took the envelope, felt the weight of recognition he'd never expected. "I'm just doing what should have always been done." "That's exactly why you should be there." Marco stood. "Oh, and bring your family. Sarah, the boys. They're part of this story, too." After Marco left, William pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo from last weekend. DJ and Michael, now 12 and 10, wearing their school soccer uniforms, grinning at the camera. DJ still talked about being a Marine, but lately he'd also mentioned college, maybe business school. Michael wanted to be a teacher, inspired by a mentor program the hotel funded at local schools. Sarah had completed her nursing degree, the one she'd abandoned when David Sr. died, paid for by scholarships William had helped her apply for using connections he'd made through the hotel's charity work. His phone buzzed. A text from Marco. "Dinner Sunday? Bringing someone I want the boys to meet. Former Marine, runs a youth program. Thought DJ might be interested." William smiled. Marco had become more than an employer, or even a friend. He'd become family in the way that mattered, not through blood, but through choice, through protection, through showing up. He typed back, "Sounds good. Sarah's cooking. You bring the wine." As the sun set over the city, William walked through the Grand Plaza one more time, watching his staff finish their shifts with energy left over, heading home to lives that weren't consumed by survival, able to think beyond the next paycheck. In the valet area, a young man, 23, new hire, reminded William of himself 50 years ago, carefully parked a luxury sedan, treating it with the respect William had taught him, but standing straighter than William ever had back then, knowing his work mattered, knowing he was seen. William thought about flapping shoes and humiliation and a stranger with a neck tattoo who had walked into his life and changed everything. He thought about Isabella Romano, who had cleaned hotel rooms for 38 years and died believing her grandson was a disappointment. He thought about how sometimes the most unlikely people find ways to honor the dead by helping the living. The young valet caught William's eye, nodded respectfully. "Good night, Mr. Carter." "Good night, James. Drive safe going home." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." "Thank you." 2 words William had heard more in the past 18 months than in the previous 50 years combined. 2 words that meant people felt valued enough to express gratitude instead of merely enduring employment. As William left the Grand Plaza that evening, walking past the entrance where he'd stood for 23 years in a flapping shoe and a worn uniform, he felt something he'd thought lost to age, and hardship, and disappointment. Contentment. Not happiness. That was too simple, too fleeting. But contentment. The deep satisfaction of knowing his work mattered. His life had purpose. His grandsons would have chances he'd never had. Somewhere in the city, Marco Vitale made deals and wielded power, and slowly, incrementally, tried to be less disappointing to a dead woman who had loved him. Somewhere in a prison, Sebastian Cross served his sentence and learned that cruelty always carries a price. And somewhere in the universe's accounting of justice and mercy and complicated redemption, maybe Isabella Romano and David Carter Sr. looked down and decided that flawed, difficult, trying to be better was good enough. It wasn't perfection, but it was progress. And sometimes, progress was all that mattered.